Welcome to a new episode in my GUI scripting series. This time I'm going to combine some of the techniques that we have seen already and show a method of extracting data from tables with large amount of entries, for example the accounting document headers. In this example I will show a process of extracting records in batches and merge them together in Excel. If you are new to GUI scripting, I recommend watching my first video in this series, which explains the basic and addresses some of the basic issues. As always, the link to this example file is in the video description. What you see now is I am in table BKPF, which is the accounting document headers, and I'm using Excel to extract data from this table for a specific company code and in various date ranges. So I'm running this extract over and over for company code 1029, and I'm extracting information data 1 month at a time. So I'm using the accounting document date, I think it's the BLDAT, to set the ranges from first of the month to the last day of the month. And in this example, I'm running this through Monday, 1st of January to the end of August, and I'm extracting separate files, each containing the accounting document headers for that particular month. So within that one specific extract, I only have about a few 10,000 of records, but of course, the system can handle a lot more than that. This is just one example that I'm using this. So this is not a particularly large file. By the end this script runs, it would be extracting about 150,000 records, I think, which as a matter of fact, you can do it in one single go as well. I just wanted to use this as an example how you can actually do it and build a framework around it. So now the extract process have completed, and it created one extract file for each of the month, and now it's combining all this data into a single list within Excel. So what it actually is doing is importing all the text files separately and importing them into the temp worksheet, and then once it is imported, then it just uses simple copy functionality within Excel to copy the data over to export and into the export worksheet, and it always does that by finding the last line in the worksheet, so it always appends to the end of it, and it just cycles through all the files that have been created in the previous step in the process, and at the end hopefully we would have all the records in one single sheet. Of course, this assumes that all the separate extracts are in the same format, but you are running SE16 with the same settings, so they should be able to, well, they should export the same data. I mean in terms of columns. And now the script has completed. So again, I started this process at 10:31, so it took roughly 4 minutes to extract 150,000 records. So actually here you can see the last record. So that was my only document header for August. And within the export, you can see that I'm line 149154, and you see all the data here. First, let me go back to the first worksheet, which is the script worksheet. By the time, if you are modifying this one, please do not change the labels of the worksheets, because the code references to these worksheets by the label. So it's like script, log, export, and temp. Of course, you can create new ones and then rearrange them, but just keep these names. So you should have these four worksheets at least. So in the main one, I just have some description or explanation what this code does. Whenever the extract finishes, it updates this time, so you know what the latest data is extracted at. And of course, when you need to run it, you need to specify the client and the SID. So I'm running it in Z01 and client 400. And you also need to specify a file or a folder where all the files are getting extracted, and this folder needs to exist because the script is not going to create this. So if I look at this folder, then I can see that this is where the individual text files are getting created, and you are getting these text files by going to SE16, you run the report, and then you export it to a local file, and I use unconverted format. And Probably you have seen this format many different times. So that's how the SAP extracts the data by default. So it's a fixed, well, it's a delimited file, and the delimiter is a pipe character, and then it has some headers as well. But we are going to see how to import this later on. Again, depending on what you are using this method for, you might want to have different filters. So for the sake of this example, I've said that, okay, I'm going to use company code as a filter, and I'm going to use the from and document date from and to. And based on the amount of data that I have, it is sufficient for me to run it in 1 month intervals. And actually, Excel gives us a nice formula to calculate dates. So I just specified the first date here, and then the next date are always 1 month plus the date above, and the document date 2 is basically this date, sorry, the from date plus 1 month, which is the E date, cell, comma 1, and then -1, it could just go back to the previous date. And then I use the formatting just to format the date in this style. And based on my regional settings and my SAP settings, so my SAP GUI expects the date in the same format. So it's the day, month, year, but not with slash separated, but the dots. So later on in the code, I'm just going to replace the slashes with dots. And when you click on the extract button, then the script or the Excel will execute the GUI script 7 times in this case, and it will provide these filters, and then every time it runs the SC16, it's going to extract the files, and they are going to the files will be named as export underscore and an ID, which is the same as the row ID. So it always starts with 10, and then my example finishes with 17. And again, as I said, once the extract is done, then all of the files will be imported into the temp folder, and then the content, which is, well, basically from line 3 downwards, it will copy them over to the main export worksheet, and of course copy below the existing items. One other thing that we need to be aware of is that because we have this import file structure, and especially if I look at the text example, I'm going to say to Excel that import this with the delimiter of pipe, and every time there is some extra spaces here, for example, here there are some trailing spaces on the Rechnung, and they will come over to Excel with the trailing spaces as well. So and I find this so this can cause some issues later on. Probably not with this text file, but if you have some trailing spaces after some ID fields, and you want to do like a VLOOKUP, then the extra spaces will cause the VLOOKUP to fail. So it's a good idea to trim these down. And again, I just have a piece of code here which does that. And probably it's not an issue here because the document number is exactly the same length as the field, so there is no spaces here. But in other cases, this can be an issue. In order to see what the script is doing, I've also created this log folder, this log worksheet where the script just dumps some information about the extract process and also the load and the copy process. I mean, if you just go through this list, once the script has completed, and if you see anything red, then you know that something has gone wrong. And if it looks like this, everything is black, then the process was completed. And of course, if the extract fails, then you need to do some a more detailed investigation, maybe debug through the code and see what each line does in the GUI and where something might fail. I don't think that the copy or the load would fail for any reason if it's correctly scripted. So most probably you need to make some changes to this example anyway. So you need to have some sort of programming experience, or at least you need to know what you are doing, and that would probably help you in the debugging as well. Before I show how you record your own script and how you modify the import process, Let me just go through the code. So I just clicked Alt F11 just to open the Visual Basic Editor, and I usually say this all the time because that's quite important. Just to make sure that in Tools References you have the SAP GUI scripting library ticked, because otherwise this script is not going to work. And if it's not listed in here, then you can use the Browse button, and then you can browse the OCX file, which is shown here. The code, instead of going through each of the method, probably I'm just going to go through as it executed in the when you click on the extract data button. So when you do that, there is a method which gets executed, which is the start extract. Yeah, it's here. First of all, it's going to ask you a question just to make sure that you delete your old extract files, because then it's not going to override them, and then you might just merge some incorrect entries. So anyway, just make sure that you delete whenever you create a new extract. So that's confirmation messages just to make sure that it happens. And then it checks some sets some variables, and then it then resets the log, and then it deletes all the data which is in the export worksheet. So anything that you have here will get lost, and also the log will get cleared. So we are setting some of the setting the Excel back to the initial state. And the next, the script is going to look at your settings in here. Which is basically starting from line 10. It's going to go through every single line, and it will check whether you have some data in the first column, which, I mean, in my case is the company code. If you wouldn't use the company code, maybe you would have the date in here. Again, you probably need to make this change the columns and everything here based on what you want to download and what sort of parameters that you want to set. But the assumption in the code is, as long as you have some entries here and as long as you have some values in column A, then it would be a new script or a new extract that it needs to run through in SAP to extract the data. So this is why I have 7 lines here. So I have 7 extracts, and of course, if I would add new lines here going further in time, then it would just process those lines as well. Good. And then for each of these lines, so as long as the value is not nothing, it's going to execute this run GUI script. And this run GUI script is where the actual scripting happens. And if you have seen my videos, you probably have seen this block before. So in the beginning, I'm just checking whether I have successfully attached to a GUI session, and then I just prepare the file name. So as I said, the file name, the export file name is always going to be export underscore, and the current line left padded with zeros up to 4 digits. And then I also extract the folder, which is the folder that you have specified here. So from the folder and this file name, that's how the file name would get generated. And then I start the actual GUI script. And if you have done enough of these, you can probably read this. So I execute SC16. I put the table name, which is BKPF, and then I set the first parameter, which is the company code, and I do the next 2 parameters, which is the date, low and high values. And as you can see, sales current line 1 dot value is the current line, which is starting from 1011. So, and then the comma 1, which means that it's the first column, so that's going to be the company code. Column 2 is the date from, column 3 is the date to. So that's where I put the company code into the script, and the from date and the to date, and I'm using this replace to replace all the slashes to dots. And again, if your local settings are somewhat different, then you need to change this just to make sure that SAP accepts those date fields. And next, I'm setting the column width to well, above 1000, just to make sure that I can extract as many fields as I want. Again, because we are using SE16, you can only extract a set number of fields. I mean, probably anything beyond 10,000 columns is going to get truncated anyway. So this is not suitable for extracting really large tables with high number of columns. And I also set the maximum record size to 100,000. And then I execute the report and I click on and I enter %PC, which just calls the extraction functionality, the standard SAP functionality in SE16, and I specify the file name and the folder, and I press generate, so then it generates the file name. And if everything is right, then I just add a message saying that, yeah, we have successfully extracted the file. And if anything goes wrong, then the execution jumps here, and then it just gives you an error message saying that the execution has failed. So if something fails, the best thing is that you put a breakpoint in the code, for example, somewhere here, and then you execute and then see what you can bring up the debugging functionality. So if you right click here and then debug, and that's this one step over, is you can step over every single line of this and then see where the error happens. I mean, if you have scripted your process incorrectly, you have an extra window or something which pops up, then this script would most probably fail. So then you would need to correct that. Before I go any further, maybe we should look at how we are going to create a script for this particular example. So I'm going to go over to my system, and in script recording and playback, I will specify my script. Oops. Okay. So SE16_3, and I'm going to start the scripting. So the first thing is just to go into the transaction. I'm already into SE16, but let's just do it. And always use the /n. So if your script doesn't come out of any older transaction, then you can always restart, start with a new transaction. So it's a good idea to start with SE16, and then BKPF. Always remember to type every single field, even if something is defaulted, because if it's defaulted, it's not going to get recorded in the script. So for company code, I'm going to specify this, and for the date, it's 01/01/2017 to, let's say, I'm doing the first month, 17. Okay, and as I said, I'm going to increase the width, and I'm also going to increase the maximum number of hits. Again, set it to whatever suitable in your example. So I set it to 1 million. I don't know how many entries you will get in a single month based on a company code, or whatever filters that you are setting. So then we execute. It's going to take some time. I probably should have left it in the original values just to make this a little bit quicker. Okay, wasn't so bad. So let's extract the data. So it's the same, %PC is the same as, what is it? Yeah, download, I think. So, yep. And I use unconverted. And again, we wait a little bit until it gets formatted. I think on 26,000 records, it should only take a few seconds. Okay, I want to save in the same folder, and then test, and then generate. You see the data is being downloaded. Oh, it's done. And then hopefully it will get created here. Not that we really care about this file at this moment. So, and I can stop the recording, and that's it. And if I go here, then we can see that the file has been created. So if I just go to edit, then we see the same structure what I have already copied into the Excel document, into the macro. So I select all the code which starts with this session find by. So these are the actual operations that are happening in the GUI. Everything up here is more like housekeeping, which is anyway done in my script already. So I copy this and basically I insert it here. You see it's pretty much the same code because I have done exactly the same steps what I have done before. The first thing that I need to do is I just name this session variable differently. So that all needs to be replaced. Maybe I can use replace all as well. I should have, that's not too big. And we are almost done. So again, if you look through the code, we do SE16, we put the table name, it's all fine. Now we need the company code. So that fixed value would obviously need to be replaced with something which comes from the Excel. So again, cells, bracket, the current line, always use the current line because that's the one that we are processing, and comma, the column ID, and the column ID is always starts with 1. So A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, and so on. And dot value will get the value of that cell. And if you are using something like a date, then again you use cell current line, let's say 2 dot value, and then you just put the whole thing into replace, and then you replace whatever your local settings are. And this is this piece of code here is not going to reformat the date the way it looks like. So if you are in the US and your Excel is day, month, year, but your SAP is month, date, year, then I would well, either change this code to do something else, to do the swapping of the day and the month, or I don't know, change your Excel or change your GUI settings. I'm not sure how to do that, so you need to find it out. And the same applies for the to date. And then you you leave some of the these lines as it is at the moment. So that's the width, the number of rows, and these are the different button presses that I've done to execute and bring up the export functionality. And now we have the text, the path, and the file name. And for the path, we just say folder. It equals to the variable folder. And for the file name, we just say that it equals the variable file name. And I think we probably have the exact same line. And of course, you can delete my examples, and that's how you replace my script and my table and my filters with yours. So let me just leave the original code. So that was all about replacing, recording a new script in SAP and then creating it. Again, just remember that you can do this script recording in any system. It doesn't have, let's say if you want to use this in production, you can record the script in development, test, or pre-production system. Of course, they should be the same. The tables should be the same with the same values. So that's not going to be the problem. It's going to work exactly the same way. Probably the only difference is, which is a little bit of well, it's an issue with SE16, is you need to have the same filters. So because actually I'm not really sure, but oh, okay, so you need to have the same filters on the screen, because it well, maybe even need to have in the same order, because as you can see, it just says I1, I5, which is the first one and the fifth one in the filters, just to make sure that your what is it? Yeah, fields for selections in the system where you are recording and the system where you want to run it is the same. Good. Let's go back to the script. So that would take care of the extraction. So for every range that you have defined in Excel and what you have defined here in the filters would generate one single file in the folder that you have specified. So if you go back to the start extract, so this will run in a loop until it finds an empty line in column A after line 10. So again, in my case, that would be line 18. So you would just do 7 extracts and it will stop here. And then this could be also important if you are running, if you have some other calculation in the Excel, because this single line will turn the calculation to manual. So because we will start entering data into Excel, I don't want the Excel to every time I paste something in just to rerun calculations. So you can just turn it off, and then we will turn it back on right at the end of the process. That will save some, well, it can save considerable amount of time in the whole processing. So we go back to we set the line back to 10. So we start again processing the lines from the first one again. But now what we are doing is, again, we are generating the file name, and we try to load that file and load that content into Excel. Again, this code has some assumptions, so it's not going to check whether the file exists or not, but it will just assume that all the extract have completed successfully, and it will. So in my case, I have extracted 7 different files, and it will try to load those 7 files based on the same file name, and if it will fail, it will just go and skip to the next one. But at least you will see an error on the log. So first I delete everything in the temp sheet, and I just put the file name together again, and I try to and I call this function, which is the extract, open extract with the file name. If I go to open extract, this is the second script that you probably need to modify, which is about loading this extract into Excel. And to do this, that's also very easy to do, because we are going to ask Excel to make all the hard work for us, and we are going to record a macro. By the way, if you don't have this developer functionality, so this developer ribbon, then I think you come here, customize ribbon, and then you tick the developer, because by default it's not shown. And I'm going to do it all here. So the easiest way is to record a macro. So I just said, okay, I want to record a new macro. And you start the recording, and the way you import a text file is you come to the data ribbon and you say, I want to import from text, and this is the test that we have imported, extracted just before. So it has delimiters, and I'm going to also specify that as only start importing from row 4, so that's where we have the column headers. And I go next. Actually, I can probably take this one as well. And I say that my delimiter is the pipe, and I go next. And we can see that because the way the text file looks like, sorry, not this one, but so it has all these extra pipes right in the beginning, so it will create some additional columns that we don't actually need. So what I do here is I select this first one and I say do not import, and if I go further, then I just need to scroll a little bit more. Yeah, okay. And I don't need this second one either. That's also an empty one, so if you see there's no data in there. And actually I don't need a mandant either, so I can skip that. So the client. So the first real a column that I'm going to import is going to be the company code, and you have the document number and some other things. And if you find anything which is a date field, then you just specify that it's a date field with this particular formatting, so it's the day, month, year, because then it would get converted to a real date field in Excel instead of like this. Because if you import like date.month.year, well, at least in my Excel it will be just treated as a text, which is probably not the best in some cases, especially if you want to do some functions within those date fields. And again, just check your regional settings. So I have some value fields here. So for example, this one, so I can see that my decimal separator is the comma, and my thousand separator is the dot, which is not how my regional settings are set in Excel, so I should change that as well. And then that should be it. You do finish, and yes, I want to import it into A1, and we just have to wait a little bit, and it's done. So, and you can see that We don't have all the extra columns in the beginning. We have an empty line, but that's fine. And as you can see, the dates have been imported as dates, except with these ones where there was no actual date in the field. So that looks nice. And again, what I've said previously is that you have these fields with the trailing spaces, like here. Maybe there is a few trailing spaces here, and probably there will be some other fields as well. But let's not care about this right now. So I'm going to stop the recording, and if I go back to the Visual Basic, because I've already had one module created here, Visual Basic creates another module where it puts the macro. And I've accidentally recorded these extra navigation steps here when I was clicking through some of the fields, so I can delete that. So, but if you stop the recording right after the table or the file being created, you will get something like this. So it's it always starts with read active sheet, query tables, add blah 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 blah, and you can see the file name here, and then the first line after that is going to be command type 0, and then name and all the rest. So all you need to do is copy this, not the command line, but just anything, well, actually, not even the name. So from this one, field names, and to all the way to end with. So you copy that, and you come back to this method, which is the open extract, and you're just going to paste it in here. Okay, so that replaces my import script with your import script for a table which could be different from mine. So again, you see all the different delimiters that we have set here, and you know, the pipe delimiter, the decimal separator, and this here, the column data types, is the one that where we said that we don't need the first three fields, three columns, and then we needed these columns to be like a date type, and everything else would be just imported as general fields. Oh, you can see the decimal separator and the thousand separator here. So this is just to make sure that once we import, it comes through in a correct format. Good. Let's go back to, so that's all about this method. This runs this step. And as you can see, there is some error handling here. So if it fails, it's going to fail gracefully and not stop the entire process. So we just carry on and try to do the same for the next file. Let me go back to the start extract. So we open the extract file. If it fails, then we just add something to the log saying that it failed to load the whatever file name. And if it loads, then we just add a message saying that the file name loaded. And then we have the streaming options. So as I said, in some cases you would need to trim some of the fields that you want to use later on. So if you need to get rid of the trailing spaces, and if you uncomment this trim all, it's a very crude function defined later on here in the code, which is going to go through every single column and well, every single line and column in the worksheet, and then just basically trim every field, which works fine, but it's probably time consuming. So if you want to trim only certain columns, then you can use this one, which is like, let's say, trim column 20. And in my case, column 20 is my text one. So if you just start selecting the columns, you see this tool hub which says how many rows and times 20C. So it says 20 columns. So instead of counting them, you can just say that oh, okay. So that's column 20. So trimming the text, you can do this, and of course you can do more if you want to trim column 5 as well. So that's again just to save some time, because believe me, if we are really going to export like, I don't know, millions of entries, this script is going to run for a while. So try to save as much time as you can. So we do the trimming, and then we do this copy over, which you should not be making any changes here, because all it does is, well, it checks whether we are processing the first extract, because if we are processing the first extract, then it selects the first row from the temp, and then it copies over to the export, which is basically copying the headers, so the headers over. into export, yeah. And then next we find again, this is a really simple method of finding the how many rows in I have in the temp, so I can select all the rows at once. And again, this code is very simple. It has some assumptions. Again, it assumes that you have in column A, which is like this one, you have a value which is always maintained for record. And that was one of the reasons I got rid of the first couple of columns in the import process, because they contain a lot of empty stuff. And I even get rid of the client. So in my case, the first column is the company code, which, I mean, usually the first couple of rows in any table are going to be key fields, so they are never going to be empty. So I think this is a fair assumption to have in the code. So once I have the last row, then I select all those rows, and then again I go over to the extract worksheet. Where's my worksheet? Yeah, sorry, not extract, export. And again I find the last line, and then I select the next line, and I just do, paste. And that's what this code does. So it basically selects everything in a temp and then copies that all those lines over to the end of the list in the export tab. This code is self-sustained. You don't need to make any changes to that. And again, it doesn't really care about what columns, how many columns you have, what is the column order, because it assumes that all the exports are in exactly in the same format. Going back to the start extract method. Yeah, we do the copy over. Again, if it's successful, we issue a message in the log in black. If it's unsuccessful, in red. And then we keep carry on doing this for every single line. And then once it is done, we set the calculation method back to automatic on the worksheet, and we just say that, yeah, we have completed, and we print the current timestamp to, where is it? Script here. So this actually shows when the whole extract process completed, which could be a few minutes after the data, well, can be even like half an hour or hours later than the data actually got extracted from SAP. So I think that will be all. Well, that would be this process in a nutshell. And again, head to the video description. You will find, I will put this file into Google Drive, and then you will find the link to Google Drive in the video description. And again, what you need to do here, what you really need to do with this file, this script, to customize it to your needs, is move these, well, change these columns based on whatever you want to filter on. Actually, besides this, there is one more important thing here in the code, is within the run GUI script method, there are two lines here. Is this one and this one. So it says in the current line, set the value of column 4 to 1, or set the value of column 4 to 2, which is basically the status. So if it's 2, it says failed. If it says 1, it's completed. So if you need more than 3 filters here, and you start inserting stuff here, then make sure that you update these 4s to whatever column number the status fields ends up in, because otherwise you're just going to override or whatever stuff you have in column D. So I don't think, well, or you can comment this whole thing out, because you will get some logs in the log tab anyway. So I just left it in because I've used it in earlier examples. Probably I shouldn't really need this anymore, but anyway, just there is something. So if you find something weird happening in column D, that's because of these 2 lines here in the code. Commenting is the apostrophe in Visual Basic, if you don't know. Going back to where I started, is the code, everything here is written in a way that it doesn't really care what you are exporting, how you are exporting it. So again, first thing is you do is you make some changes here based on how you want to filter. If you want to have, if you want to use different codes, if different fields to filter based on. So maybe you don't need the company code, or you need one more filter, or like a document type, whatever. The dates again can be different, but most probably you would use like a from and to limit the amount of data, especially if it's based on dates. And then you can use this edate functionality if you want to do it by month. And once that is set, then first thing to modify is the run GUI script, because most probably you would use a different table, you would use different filters, so that script is not going to be suitable. I've just shown how you record this and how you replace it. So first thing is just to create the recording, bring the code over, replace the session with obj session or obj sess, and then of course replace all the fixed values in your recording with the actual variables from the script, and replace the file name and the folder as well. And then the next one that needs changing is the open extract method. Again, use the built-in query recording or the macro recording functionality in Excel to see to create a Visual Basic code how you would import your text file with all the different settings of delimiters and column filters and everything. And then once this is all done, the script should be ready to go, and then it should work just like it is for me. I hope you found this video useful and you can adapt my example to your personal needs. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.